What would love do matters now more than ever. I'm recording this episode just after my TEDx talk, What Would Love Do? The most powerful question we are not asking, was released. And the question guiding me today as I share is the same question. What would love do? Thanks for joining us today at the Healing Medicine Podcast. Who are you listening to? I am Dr. Jessie Mahoney, and my co-host is Dr. Ni-Cheng Liang. We are two board-certified physicians who bring decades of experience to the conversation about wellness. If you crave more ease and aspire to rediscover your love for medicine and life, one mindful step at a time, you are in the right place. We hope you'll love today's episode, and if so, please share it. A reminder that nothing in our podcast is medical advice. Welcome to today's episode, What Giving a TEDx Talk Taught Me as a Physician, and what you might want to know about it too. Love would record this podcast in the moment while I am still feeling twangy and vulnerable about sharing in such a public way and such a personal story. Love would not wait until everything feels settled or comfortable. And love wouldn't hide, which is one thing that feels like it could be kind of nice right now. Love would actually stay committed, even as my nervous system registers that this is all out in the world and out of my control. Because this message is something that I very much want to share. I gave this What Love Would Do TED Talk not because I wanted a platform. I gave it because I had something I really wanted to share, something that had shaped my life and my work for years. And I wanted it to live beyond my retreats and beyond this podcast and beyond my talks at conferences and my Zoom groups. What would love do has the potential, I believe, to change the world. Towards the end of the talk, I say, imagine a world where we place our hand on our heart, take a breath, and ask ourselves, what would love do in challenging situations and when faced with difficult decisions? Our world would literally change. Healthcare would change. Politics would change. Relationships would change. What would love do has been an orientation for me as a physician, a leader, a coach, a mom, a wife, daughter of aging parents, and human in the world. I don't think of it as branding or a slogan, though it has kind of become that for me, but it's literally just a steady question that I ask myself many times a day. And I ask it when logic isn't enough, when the questions are tough, when the decisions don't feel clear, when I feel conflicted, when they're hard, when there are big things at stake. When you make a decision from love, you rarely regret it. And so giving this talk actually deepened my commitment to this question. I didn't really think that was possible, but here we are. So the origin of the question is the beginning of the talk. And I share in the talk about how 10 years ago, my life was falling apart and no amount of trying was making it better. And I share about my marriage to my high school sweetheart and 25 years in, when on the surface, everything looked fantastic. He was a lawyer, I was a doctor, we had 3 kids, a house and a dog. But underneath, my husband had been struggling with mental health challenges. And my reaction, which was trained reactions, which seemed helpful in the moment, were actually making things worse. And I had been trained as a physician, as many of you have been, to lean into the data, the logic, the research, the evidence, to lean into reading endlessly and managing, fixing, controlling every single moving piece. The questions that I ask myself, something I work on here a lot with all of you in the podcast and in my coaching groups and in retreats, were not super helpful questions. They were disguised as helpful questions. How do I fix this? How do I prevent disaster? How do I make sure everything turns out okay? These questions came from a place of fear and scarcity, and the answers to them lead you to fear and scarcity. They came from the fact that in medicine, we were taught that control was safety. But if I wanted control, it wasn't out there to be had. And so if I wanted safety, I had to be asking different questions. And it was the recognition that asking helpful questions is what would give you helpful answers. And that is what literally shifted my life, recognizing that the way I had been taught to ask questions and the way that most of you are taught to ask questions is not necessarily helpful in some of life's biggest, most challenging moments. And that this lens of emotion, human emotion, and love is one of the things that we leave out of decision making that is most helpful. It's one of the reasons why decisions feel so hard. And I tell the story about this question, what would love do, and the somatics behind practicing it, and my experience in having clarity as a result of a single question. And recognizing that the clarity and the question only came up when my nervous system was calm, something I teach here all the time. And so when this question came up, what would love do? It helped me see what was true and what felt hidden underneath. And that story is about my husband's neurodivergence and our neurodiverse love marriage, and the challenges that that brings to a doctor, lawyer with 3 children, managing life. And it isn't that it's a problem. It's the awareness that you have and the clarity that you have when you ask this question, what would love do? And when I'm talking about what would love do, it's really clarifying that this is not sentimental love. It's not fixing, martyring love. It's grounded. It's honest. It's love tells the truth forever and always. It's committed to doing no harm, including to ourselves. And it isn't logic or data or logic or evidence or love or evidence. It's actually a refinement, a discernment, and it's helping you interpret the data by filtering it through what matters most, which for the human condition, love matters. It's one of the most energetically active, clean, pure emotions, not falling in love, butterflies, rom-com love, but that deep, true love that cares for other humans. Giving a TED Talk is a whole thing. There are a lot of rules about it. It isn't just standing up there and sharing whatever you want. There's a format and a structure, and I got help. I wanted this TED Talk to be successful, and I don't yet know if it will be, but I wanted to give it my all, and I wanted to send it out into the world with the highest likelihood of going viral, if that's the word, or having a lot of views, really just reaching people in the nooks and crannies, the people who need it, parents who want to parent in a more kind and loving way, children who want to support their aging parents in a more kind and loving way. I hope that it becomes a mantra in healthcare. Hospitals have in the Vietnamese culture been labeled as houses of love. And this question, what would love do, can help you with patient care. It can help you with budget questions. It can help you as a leader. And so putting this question out there was really important to me in a way that it could travel far. But what I learned in learning about TED Talks is that they have these rules and they have these structures. And I'm not a rule follower. I don't love rules. I love acting outside the box. But you can't give a TED Talk off the cuff, which is how I love to give my keynote talks. They're not off the cuff, but they're not memorized. And It's really a performance and it's a memorization. And I value presence over a performance and conversation and connection over memorization. And the process required not only strategy in the format, but a lot of rehearsal. I do not like rehearsing, and it was hard for me, really hard. And what helped me through was this deep commitment to the topic, deep commitment to authenticity and integrity, and the inner knowing that if I wanted this message to live beyond me, I had to be willing to tolerate discomfort, and that love would stay committed even when it's uncomfortable. And love would choose the reach over the ease, and love would keep practicing and rehearsing, even though I just did not want to. And with regards to the structure of it, that was the same thing. For me, I had to lean into what a TED Talk is and what's the format to fit inside the box with the overarching belief that the message was most important. The other thing about giving a talk, which is hard for physicians, is that we are trained to blend in, to not stand out, to not risk being misunderstood, to not be vulnerable. And for those of you who have listened to this talk, it's a vulnerable talk. We're also taught to sort of be professional, dress in a professional way, be neutral, don't rock the boat. And that was why it's hard for so many of us in medicine to give a TED Talk, to recognize that we have to risk being misunderstood. We have to risk being vulnerable, invisible. We have to stand out if we want to give a TED Talk. That's the whole point. It's also a nervous system trigger. And so doing this talk required all of my nervous system work to be able to drop into calm and show up in the way that I wanted. Because of course, as you give a talk about what would love do and mindfulness and being calm and grounded and hand to heart, you have to show up with that energy. The other very intentional way that I showed up for this talk, and any of you who have watched it on YouTube know, was the dress. And I chose the dress very intentionally. Number one, I loved it and I wanted the dress. But as soon as I saw the dress, I knew it was the TED Talk dress. And it was a very bold, colorful, feminine dress. If you look at most people's TED Talks, they're wearing business attire or jeans and a black shirt a la Steve Jobs. And I didn't go that route. I made it a very embodied, graceful, elegant outfit that went with the talk. You will also notice, which was super cool, is that it goes with the TEDx black and red colors, and I blended in perfectly, or I stood out perfectly, I should say. But that's not why I wore it. I wore it because I wanted to not disappear and I wanted to stand out. And it was important to me to match what I had to say so that it was all a piece. And the talk was me once again stepping out, being willing to be vulnerable and visible, and remembering that that was important in being able to share this message of love. And anything I had to do that was uncomfortable to do that was going to be worth it. So one funny bit during the rehearsal and preparation is that I got feedback along the way from the person who was helping me that I wasn't funny enough, that you had to have humor. And I first took it as criticism and felt like, well, I'm not funny. How could I be funny? And then I tried to really lean into this funny. And I began to realize that there are things that are funny and I can be funny, and that funny doesn't have to be prepared joke. Humor is actually connection, and common humanity involves humor and laughter. I also teach very often in coaching and in yoga that when we laugh and when things are funny and when we relax, it's a nervous system reaction, which actually allows you to take in the message better. And so adding in some humor to a few pockets of my talk would allow me to relax and potentially allow listeners to relax. And then they would take up the message and retain it better. And so that part became fun. And I began to search around for little nuggets that were uniquely me, that were totally in alignment and in integrity, that also went with the talk, that would make people smile or giggle or lighten it a bit, knowing that the energy that you're bringing to the talk is part of its impact. And so a little lightness and a little humor, which is actually who I am anyway, can make the talk feel more real and authentic. And this carries over to being ourselves in the exam room and being yourselves in a relationship. Lean into who you are. Bring your own humor and bring a little bit of lightness and strategic energy to whatever you do, whether it be a TED Talk or a patient encounter or a conversation with your spouse. And when you show up in an honest, authentic, light way, it feels good. So when the day of the talk came, I actually wasn't that nervous, as it turns out. I felt really grounded and comfortable. Things felt aligned. The talk felt like me. It's funny because as I listen to it now, I think of things that I wish I had added, that I wish I had said, that I wish I had paused longer or changed things up. And that is our overcritical doctor brain that comes to play after. But in the moment, I felt quite aligned and grounded and trusting of myself, more so than I have on a stage in the past. Maybe not so much as I'm giving so many keynotes these days, because it feels like a comfortable, normal space that I show up in all the time. But showing up in a very uncomfortable space, such as a red circle, and having to stay in that circle and with lots of cameras and lights and things like that. But I felt trusting of myself and recognizing that giving a TED Talk is not only about being vulnerable and being visible and leaning into integrity and what matters most and what you really want to share with the world. It's about self-trust and trusting that you can do this and want to do this, and what you have to share is of value. And it takes a ton of work. And it takes a ton of work, not just on the memorization, but on your nervous system and on intentional presence. And it's very different than being in the flow of a yoga class or being in the flow of an exam room. It takes practice. And that doesn't mean it's dangerous. It just means that it's something you're not familiar with. When I first started working on it, I thought, I'm not good at this. I can't do it. And really, it was a matter of familiarity and practice. As I often say, what you practice grows. So by the time I got to the day of the talk, it had grown so that the talk was literally a part of me. And my nervous system could find a steady, balanced state as I gave it. And I will say that when I walked off the stage that day, I felt quite proud and like I had come to do something and I had done it. So interestingly, as it's released out in the world, I have a lot of thoughts and criticism and anxiety, which I just want to be very vulnerable and honest about that. Of course I do. And my task now is to share it, and it doesn't carry on a life of its own if I don't do the intentional work to do that. And part of that is asking you all to help me share it. So that's part of the purpose of this podcast. But I also think many people have asked me the story of how it came to be and why I did it and what's it like to do it. And so I'm sharing that as well. But to honor that when something like this gets put out in the world, it is out of your control. And in medicine, we do not like feeling out of control. It's part of what I talked about in the TED Talk. And yet love would have been willing to feel out of control as I navigated my difficult family situation 10 years ago. And love would be willing to let it be out of my control now, in service of the message and in service of a world where we need more love. Today feels like a day where that is even more needed than ever. And hopefully that this talk will spread farther. Perhaps our politicians could hear it. Perhaps just general common humanity in this time of judgment and differences. So sticking with it, love would stick with the uncomfortable sensations, and love would continue to talk about it and continue to share it and to lean in and be committed, because I am very committed to sharing what would love do as a tool. Reminding you, as I do towards the end of the talk, imagine a world where we made decisions from love in medicine, in healthcare, in politics, in relationships. We would have less fear. There would be less reactivity. There would be less violence and less judgment. There would be a lot more truth and a lot more courage and a lot more alignment and authenticity and general human kindness and caring. If more people could ask this question, what would love do? Urgency would be interrupted and directions would be clarified. And so I offer to all of you this tool of what would love do. Where could you use it in your life, whether healthcare, politics, relationships? Is there a message that you might like to share, similar, that the world needs to hear? Physicians have unique and powerful voices, and while we are afraid of visibility and afraid of vulnerability and afraid of judgment, our voices are powerful if we're willing to stand tall and share them. And being willing to do this has reinforced my belief in that. So considering, what decision are you facing right now? Could what would love do help you? Where might you be invited to be choosing love over control? If you're facing a challenge or a difficult decision, what would love do for you? What would love do for the others involved? And what would love do for the greater world? So my request towards the end of this podcast is, if this talk resonated with you, this podcast, please go listen to the TED Talk if you haven't. And if you've listened to both, would you please, please, please help me share it? It's going to be the hardest part for me. I just shared with you all the other hard parts. And what I'll say is that this project continues to be hard, and it also continues to be worthwhile. And I'm asking you to share it, not because I want you to amplify me. That's not what this is about, but I want to share this question. That's why I did the talk. That's why I spent all that time memorizing it and flying to Houston, which is where I gave it, because Love would literally share the question, would share the message as a TED Talk, and Love would ask you all to help me, help me have it reach those people who really need it. And decisions made from love, they rarely lead to regret. And boy, in this world today, do we need more of that. So in closing, sharing what love would do is what love would do. And I want to offer to all of you to lean into it. When you feel overwhelmed, disconnected, stuck, when it feels like the world is crashing down or chaotic, which may be more days than not in this moment, can you pause and bring your hands to your heart? Use your physiology strategically. Release some oxytocin, lessen the cortisol, balance your nervous system. Take a breath. Close your eyes. Shut out the noise of the world so you can listen, and ask yourself, what would love to? Thank you all so much for listening and for being part of my world. I will likely over time share a bit more about why I believe physicians should do more podcasts, and many of the lessons that I learned from doing this one. I am certain that on day 2, after it showing up on YouTube on the TEDx platform, that there are a lot more challenges for me and learnings along the way. And I hope to share them with you in service of you all sharing your beautiful, powerful messages that the world needs to hear more of as well. Thanks so much for listening. Sending out much love to all of you today.
Thanks for listening. If our message resonates, we'd love to connect further. Join us for coaching, mindfulness experiences, workshops, and retreats. Invite us to speak at your institution or conference. When you work with us, you don't just consume information, you create real change. Find me Chang Liang at Awakened Breath and Jessie Mahoney at Pause and Presence.
Welcome to today's mindful moment, a what would love do moment. I invite you to close your eyes, drop your shoulders, and take a breath. Breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. Taking a moment to notice your physiology. Notice if you feel stressed. And bring a hand to heart and another hand to top. Take a moment to notice how your heart feels underneath. Press the top hand into your heart space, releasing some oxytocin. Rub the top hand on the bottom hand, enjoying the cortisol. And take a moment to think about a question that is challenging you, a decision. Think for a moment about the energy that you have been bringing to that decision. Is it fear? Is it stress? Is it anxiety? And how is that working out for you? Noticing that when we bring that kind of energy to a decision, it impacts the decisions we make. The energy we bring to the questions we ask impacts the energy of the answers that we get and the quality of the answers that we get. Taking a moment now to think of that same challenge or decision that you're facing. Taking a big inhale, wrapping your heart with breath, and asking yourself, what would love do? What would love do for you? What would love do for the others involved? And what would love do for the greater world? Noticing potentially the clarity, noticing perhaps a sense of groundedness, inner knowing, truth telling. Remembering that you might not like all of the answers that you see, but that they are almost always true. Taking in another deep breath, considering the answer, what would love do? What came up for you? How might you move forward with whatever challenge you're facing, showing up with love? Not self-sacrifice or martyrdom love, but calm, grounded positivity, making the world a better place, love energy. Honest, direct, kind, compassionate, steady, courageous. How might you move forward with that kind of loving energy? What clues are there when you ask yourself, what would love do? What would courageous love do? What would honest love do? What would love do next? What kinds of questions might love ask? Letting the answer sit for a moment, pressing the heel of your hand into the heart space, releasing some more oxytocin, enjoying it. Noticing your nervous system, noticing if some of those answers made you feel a little anxious. Sometimes what love would do is hard. Love would share this TED Talk that I did, and it was hard. Sometimes love does things that are uncomfortable in the moment for the greater reward. Flipping the palms of your hand to the uncomfortable, pressing in a little bit more and letting it feel amazing. Sending yourself love, sending love to all the others involved, and sending love out to the greater world today of all days. Thank you all so much for practicing this mindful moment with me. May you all move forward with love. Namaste.